Okay, so just in case I can't find the last video, yeah, the last hour, what we talked about was this list component, this custom list component that we made, and just use Axios on mount hook, where we created our own little custom use Axios on mount. So yeah, I'll see if I can find a video, but if not, it's fine, because that's actually really doesn't have anything to do with the has many through relationship. So let's get back to that. And this, I think one of the interesting things with has many through, I think it can create, it just opens up the doors for like a lot more different UIs and UXs. For example, your doctor appointment assignment, I think there's a lot of different ways you could go about doing it. Like, is it an app where I'm a doctor and I'm logging in and I'm seeing all my patients and like when I'm having appointments, or am I a patient? Like, should the patient be able to create the appointment? Or like, is it like an admin level app where like an admin person comes in and they select a physician and a patient and create the appointment? So it kind of opens up a lot of doors to like how you actually want to create stuff. And it's not like, once again, it's not right or wrong. It's just, what is your use case? So, so as far as CRUD actions with, and I want to really focus on the grades here, because this one's a little more new to us. Let's go to our grades controller. And let's not worry about the UI right now or the UX. We can just kind of think about how we want to like create a grade. So I'll do a create method. Just kind of like I normally would. We could do like a grade equals grade dot new, and give it grade params. And then we can come create this grade params function. All right. So for this one, I'm going to do my params dot require grade dot permit. Our grade has a score. Now, actually, on this one, remember when we did like the has many, and we would like find, we did like nested routes, and we would like find the thing that the thing belongs to use that thing to create the item. This one, we're not going to have like a user or a skill create a grade. So this one, actually, I'm going to have on the form, I'm going to just have our form be able to give a user ID and a skill ID, because those are things I need to create a grade. So I'm going to make those part of my grade params. Then I can do try to save it. If grade dot save else end, let's render JSON. Grade. If not, we will render an error. This grade dot errors. This has a 422, so it actually causes an error. Now, just to show you, like I could maybe, just depending on how my UX was, let's just go to my routes. Maybe I did want to like create a path that was like users ID grades. So I'm going to create a couple custom routes just so you can have some examples. Like, so that's going to go to the grades controller. I'm going to call this create with user. I can maybe also go the other way and do like skills. Like, hey, give me the skills, give me that ID, then the grades, and then we could create with skill. So these two methods, like I would have the, like this one, I'd have the ID of the user. This one, I'd have the ID of the skill. Might be a way to do it. So I could do like a create with user. And then I could like go in and find the user, user.find rams ID, then use the user dot grades dot new. Likewise, maybe I wanted to have like a way to do a create with skill. But I don't know. I think these are kind of like don't need. It's kind of because I could do all of them with this one create up here, but just for demo. Or I could like go in and find the skill and use the skill dot grades dot new. But they're there. Let's just test them out. But the big thing to note when we create a grade, we have to have, however we create it, we need to give it the skill ID and the user ID. That's like the most important thing we keep track of. So let's just go test this first one that we're going to just kind of use probably this lecture, but we'll test the other ones. So I'll go into Postman. So if I do a post request to API grades, a 500 error, because I have a syntax error. Oh, that's not good. Create if, what line is that? Line 12 in my routes.rb. Okay. Let's go to my routes.rb. We're getting a comma right here. Okay, so there's my 400. I'm hitting it. I need to send the data. I need to send like a grade. So that's grade param, and then yeah, grade is going to have a score. 90. I try sending that. Now I get my, now it actually hits that, you know, tries to create it, tries to save it, but now I'm getting a 422. So there's my error, you know, user must exist and skill must exist. So I could do grade, and then I need to send in the user ID. I think I should probably have a user with ID and one with there, and a grade skill. Send that. And there we go. So that's working. I also created a route that was like API users 1 grades. So then I wouldn't need to send in the user ID because they get it from there. So that worked. Also did one with skills. So that'd be skill 1 grade. So I would need a user ID, but I wouldn't need a skill. I wouldn't need to send that in there. And that one works. But I think this one right here, this API grades, I can just have this one work and ascend these params here. So something with a put, if we look at a put, I do my update. This one I would want to find the grade, and maybe this one I'm going to get with params ID. And then do my grade dot update. And give it the grade params. So I find it, try to update it. So to test that, just make this a put. Then I need to give it the ID of the grade. So let's say I want to like update 5003. Let's change the score to, 10. There you go. Now that's been updated. And a delete. Would be something similar where I find the grade and then I just render JSON grade dot destroy.
Shouldn't that delete be a destroy?
Yes, it should. I think. So let's go delete 503. There we go. That works. I deleted it twice, can't find it. So yeah, that was deleted. I might, you might say, hey, for the update, I only want them to update the score. Like maybe I don't want someone to be able to update, like when they're updating a score or a grade, I don't want them to change the user or the skill. I just want them to update the score. So I can maybe have a different sanitizer for my update method. So now if someone tries to send in, if they try to send in like a user ID and skill ID, it's not going to work. It's going to filter those out. It's only going to permit score. So I could do something like that. So now if someone was trying to like do a put, so let's say that's like 502. Well, it's just first of all, well, we don't have our get method working either. Let's do a get really quick. It's going to be the exact same as our destroy, except I'm not going to destroy it and call this show. So I'm going to get, let's just want to make sure this exists. Yeah, so let's say like this grade 502 has user ID 1 and 3. And someone tries to do a put request where they try to change this to something, and then they try to change the score. Like it doesn't change, it's going to sanitize those. It's not going to allow them to update them. It only changes the score. Cool. So there's our controller. I think the controller, I think as long as you keep in mind for your, and this will be true for your like appointments, like you need the physician ID or the doctor ID and you need the patient ID to create an appointment. And now that's working. Cool. Now we get to the front end, which is, this is definitely the part where it's like, gets a little tricky. And there's not like a right way to do this. This is just like, you kind of have to think about like, well, how do I want to create a score? There's a, like I could go to the skills page. And like maybe on skills, I could like list all of the people and go pick one of them. Or I could on my people page, I could go list all the skills. Like there's a lot of different ways to do it. So I think just to keep it simple, I'm going to do this on the grades page. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a list of people and a list of skills, and then we're going to select one of each and then give it a score. Okay. So let's also do this. I think this will help with testing. I'm actually not going to create any grades by default. I'm going to create some skills. I'm going to create some users, and I'm going to just create 10 users so we don't have so many. So I'm just changing my seeds file so I have 5 skills and 10 users, but there's no grades. Another nice thing about having a seeds file, you can change it as needed for like where you're at in development. I can start my server. Okay, so we have our users, we have our skills, then we have our grades. Okay. So let's go into here. Let's create maybe like a form. So it's gonna be fun. Grade form.js. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this const grade form. Import that. So I'm just going to throw this grade form in my grades.js. And maybe I don't even want to throw that in my Axios container. That's, I don't know, that's not doing a call maybe. Let's just do a div. Where is, I need to reorganize this. First of all, let's get rid of Postman. Cool. So yeah, I guess, I don't know. Do I want this in here? I guess it doesn't matter. Let's leave it right here. So now I have my grade form. And yeah, right now I don't have any grades in my list. Cool. So let's go to my grade form and start working on this. Well, I want all my users and all, so I want all my users and all my skills. So, and I want these on mount. Let's use our hook. So I'm going to, when this form loads, I'm going to do a use Axios on mount. Do API/users, right? And I'm going to rename, so I destructured data, loading, and error, and I'm renaming these. Why am I renaming these? It's not only for readability, it's because I'm going to be doing 2 of these calls. Cool. So let's just do now. Because I want to test this, I'm just going to do my stringify JSON. Give it the data prop. So we'll do users and skills. Just want to see, can I actually, is this working? So there's my users and there's my skills. Cool. So the next thing I need to figure out is, well, let's maybe not worry about the UI right now. So this is going to be just a lovely, lovely form. So I'm going to do user ID. Put skill ID. And score. I can create some state for this. So const user ID and set. Let's just do this camel case. Set user ID equals use state. must be null by default. Or maybe like an empty string. And then we'll have skill ID, set skill ID, and we can do our score. And just look up our form. Our event and do e dot or set user ID, e dot target dot value. These for all of these. This will be the skill. Skill ID. Score. Set score. This button. Form A on submit. Take our event. And let's just console.log. I'm just going to slowly start creating the object I want to send up. It's going to be user ID, which would be user camel case ID. It would be skill underscore ID, and it'd be skill ID and then score. Why am I saying like user underscore ID right here and skill underscore ID?
Because that's how it is in the actual data. Right.
Yeah, that's how Rails is going to want it. It's going to want a user underscore ID. And I called it user ID here because I'm in JavaScript and I'm doing camel case. So you'll sometimes, you'll mix like these conventions. Like I want to use camel case in JavaScript, but yeah, I'm getting ready to send this up to Rails, and Rails is going to want it like this. Use states not defined. Let's import that. There's my beautiful form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an ID of a user, 1, an ID of a skill, 2, or 3, and then give it a score. That seemed like that refreshed. Yes, it did. I did not do e dot prevent default. Two, and then score. And there we go. User ID is going to be 2, skill ID is going to be 2, and score. So now that's working. So now I can go ahead and make this an async call and actually do my Axios call, try catch. Do let response equal await Axios.post. What was this? 8/API/grades. Send it. I'll just call this data, or let's store this to a variable called grade. and then send that grade along. Okay, so now I can come in here, have those two forms or these two things. So let's do a user ID 1, come in here, do a skill ID of 4, add a score. And there we go. That was successful. So if I had to refresh this page, I have one thing, I have one grade. Okay, so one maybe limitation of this use Axios on mount and use Axios with how we have it set up right now is it's going to be hard. Well, it's like, how do I update my state now? Because I'm now, this setter for this data now is living in this hook. So this is one of the places where like these hooks can get, or maybe you think you make something reusable, but then you cut out like a core piece of functionality. Like now I can't set my data. I mean, I could pass that here, like return that. And then in my grades, I can now pull that off of there, pass it to my grade form. Like, but I had to change this hook. Like I can't go change the use Axios hook. This one was one I've written. So I can go and change it. I can go into my grade form. And then where would I do that? Right here. Oh, I need to pass. Oh my gosh, this is getting confusing. Actually, we need to pass it the grades too. No, wait, I don't need to do that. I do an add grade function here. This takes a grade. It sets my, this is where it calls that set data function, because that is going to be the way to set my grades. I take it out, I spread out over my grades. Once again, I'm getting from right here, and then add the grade. So then in my grade form, I can now define props, and right here, I can do props dot add grade res dot data. So this would be, the add DB step. And this is the add UI step. And here we're getting set data from our hook. And we can't do this use Axios because we went in and made a change. That's something like use Axios. I can't come in here. I don't think I can. Maybe I can grab like the set data function. I'm not sure if use Axios allows you to do that or not, but we did because it was our, that's one of the nice things. If it's your hook, you can add that. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to refresh. Give it a user ID 2, skill ID 2 or 3, score of 12. That blew stuff up. Cannot read properties undefined, reading name. And that in my grade component. So this user.name, that's undefined. So can't read properties name of user. That's probably where it's breaking, but let's just do a puts right here, or sorry, console.log. Clear that. It's there. There's my grade. Set data grade. So I'm just going to do the JSON stringify right now because that won't cause the undefined error. It'll just probably show me that. I did, okay, an ID 1, 1, and 1. Where is that ID 1? This is getting tricky to debug. I feel like it is. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do like 1,000,000 so it's easy to find. User ID is 1, the skill ID is 1. Oh. This is a interesting. This one's a weird one. Remember when I get my grades, I created my own custom method that doesn't give me back the user ID and skill ID. It actually gives me back the user and skill. So now when I do my get, I'm not matching how I get it back. This is getting messy. So let's see here. Let's do this. This is how I'd say to do this as a way, because I could go through like my problem is here is I'm like, first of all, I'm trying to just update my state on this page, and that's already creating some issues with like my hooks. And then my data is now mismatching, so I'm gonna have to like think of a way around that. There's a much more simple way to fix this that I'm gonna have you do and for your homework. And that is gonna be not to try to do your CRUD actions like your create on the same page. Because the one way I can really just clean this up is to not do this here. It's a little bit of a not, I don't want to say lazy, but just for this demo, and since we're just using learning that has many through, I think it's just going to be easier to do it this way. And since we're not using like a data provider, I think this is where data providers are probably going to be useful, because we're starting to get into this point where I want to start sharing state. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of all of this. And I'm just going to create a route. New grade. Grade/new. And do this all on its own page. Because then this way, when I go back to the grades page, it will do an Axios call, reload all of my grades. Yeah, because this would be pretty messy to do it without doing it this way. We definitely could get it to work, but it's kind of beyond the time we have. So now that I create that new form, and this is how I definitely recommend you do it on your homework, is just create a new, whether it's edit or new, just like do it on a different page. It's just going to be easier. Grade form. So now I can pick out a user ID, 1, a skill ID, 5, and then a score, 23, and we can add. And then if we go back to the grades, that should be there. And also going back to the grades, I don't need to do this anymore. So there's the one, the user with ID 1, ID 5 has a score of 23. So one thing, the last thing we could, well, I mean, there's a couple of things we can do on this, but one thing I want to do on this grade form is, I'm going to get rid of this right here. We're just going to navigate right here. So navigate. And for that, I need to use navigate hook. So const navigate equals use navigate from React router. And then here I can just navigate grades. Backslash on there. So I go to new grade, user 5, skill 5, with a score of 55. There we go. And that takes us back. So that's a lot easier than to try to do this on all your CRUD actions all on one page. So you can try to do it that way, but I think you're going to get hung up. Eventually, this is where, like, yeah, I think we do want to use our data provider where we can like create this shared state. It gets messy because now like our users and skills and grades are all kind of connected. Like our new grade, we're grabbing all of our users and all of our skills, right? I already have pages that do that. So can you kind of start to see this is why we might want to have a data provider, because now we're sharing state across multiple components. If I start doing CRUD actions on users and skills, it might get a little messy. This is fine because all of these are doing, the nice thing about doing it this way where they're all on their own pages is that these are all doing Axios calls every time we load the data. So that's kind of like a easy way to fix it. Let's just load the data every time we go to a new page.
Are you saying we should or should not use a data provider?
Don't use a data provider. Do it this way where like you just have pages.
Okay.
You can try, you can definitely try to use a data provider.
Yeah, but in this example, everything's on its own page.
Yeah, I think that's going to keep it simpler. If you want to try a data provider, go for it.
Probably not.
I mean, it's really not, it might make it simpler actually, but I think this is just a nice way, you know, we're doing our mounts, we're grabbing our data. Can be pretty sure that's going to work okay. But this form is pretty bad, right? Because I have to like,
You have to know the IDs,
yeah.
which isn't great.
I mean, I could maybe make these, I could use my list component, make it a little more clean.
Be cool if it was like a drop down too, where you could select.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we want, that's what we want to do is a drop down. But I could say, hey, you know, go through each thing and, you know, at least make it look nice. Like give me the ID and the name. So I can use my list component instead of that stringify component. Give it a little more information. That might clean it up a bit. Doesn't break it. Did I import list? Oh, it's there. What does it look like here? I think it's trying to use, I think users is not defined for a second. Yeah, this is already getting like, nope, what's the error here? Oh, cannot read property length of undefined. Now that is okay. I'm going to get rid of that length thing anyway. Why is map undefined? So I'm getting that undefined error, like can't read map of undefined. So what's going on here is in my grade form, it's trying, wait, users. Users and this is not loading. I need to do like a, what I want to, it's like, I actually need this to be loaded. If users is loading or if my skills is loading, should probably use my Axios container, but just kind of want to get this working, loading. Why doesn't my, oh, it's called list. It's called list. I gave it the wrong prop name. It was called list, not data. So yeah, that's a little cleaner. to do that now if I have that if statement there. But yeah, what we should probably use is a dropdown. So I actually do not know how to select dropdown HTML. And I have not used just a vanilla HTML dropdown in forever. So let's not do that. Let's do React Bootstrap. This is where these component libraries come in very handy. Drop down. Or would it be a select? Forms. Select. I'll do one of these and then I'll have you do the other. But let's say I want to do a select. Okay, so here's how I do a select in React Bootstrap. So I'll just replace this here. I don't think I have Bootstrap installed in this library or in this project. So I would need to equip my React server, yarn start or yarn add. Actually, I want to make sure that I get their right one. Yarn add React Bootstrap and Bootstrap at 5.13. So those would be the two I add. And once again, this is something like I don't memorize. I just would go to their documentation. I just go Google React Bootstrap. Go to their getting started. Like, what else do I need? I know I need to do like a CSS thing. So then import CSS in my like index.js. Yarn start. Still going to get an error there because I don't think I imported this. I can see like the style changed a little because I imported that CSS file. And now I have a drop down. That's pretty cool. But I want to get it working. So if I look at how they do it, I'm just going to keep it with how their option is and just get it kind of like working. So something else I'd want to do is with a select is I'm looking at their props. I've on it, like I haven't used React Bootstrap for a long time. So, but I know there's like on a select, there should be some sort of callback when the thing changes. And now I can see they have a on change function. And this is called when the value prop changes. Okay, I wish they would tell me a little more what it looks like. Man, their documentation sucks. All right. But let's use this anyway. So on change. Handle change. I don't know. I don't know if they're like I'm hoping they give me some sort of values. I need a console.log x, console.log y. I don't even know if those things are going to exist. Because they're not telling me. Like, I'm assuming they should tell me what the event was. But let's just look at that. So this is how I would kind of like play around with Bootstrap. Just clear that warning. I click 1. Okay, so that looks like the event. So e.target. I wonder if I can do e.target.value. So I'm not calling it e, I'm calling it x.target.value. One, yay, there we go. That's what I want to. So yeah, that's going to be the event. And then I can do the e.target.value. So you see the thing it's logging, the value is that's what it's logging, whatever that value prop is there. And then whatever is shown here, it's what it's saying. But I don't want to do this. I want to do this with my skills. So I want to go through my skills. I want to transform my skills from an array of data to an array of options. How am I going to, what function am I going to use? I have an array of skills that look like this. They have like a name and an ID. That's what I'm getting back from my database. And I want to convert that to an array of objects that look like this, or to that JSX. You know, where this is going to be the name, and that's going to be the ID. I want to take an array of data and convert it to an array of JSX. What's the function I use? Anyone?
That just be a map.
Yeah,
Function.
this is a map. This is React 101. So I could do that right here. Go over my skills, map over them. Go through each skill. And for each skill, I just want to return one of those options. Or what did it look like? No, I already forgot. An option like this. But instead of the value, I don't want like to hard code that value. This is going to be this is where it's going to be the ID. And then for here, this is where I want to use the name. Okay, so now when I look at this, you know, it says that readable form of like the name, but when I click on it, it's giving me the ID. And so what I can do is, I don't even need this to be in its own function. This can almost just be like it was in our, this actually just stays the same. I can just set skill. This is going to be set user ID to be the e.target.value. I don't even, this was just more to debug, so I don't even need that function anymore because it works the same way as our input, like a form. And you know, just to show this, I could also like throw in the ID too, so we can see it. So Ruby has an ID of 1, so let's select Ruby, and then for my skill ID, let's select 4. So that was, see, I grabbed the right user, the ID of 2, the 4, and there's the score. Yeah, coding is not like, I really don't think we learn at a like a basic, like, I mean, there was a little with the has many through. We're really not learning anything new. We're just applying what we know in different ways, which is super confusing. Like, because you get it, and it's a nice thing about Rails, but it's also a horrible thing about Rails is because you get so dependent on the way to do stuff in like a certain way to do things. And then you switch it up a little and you're like, what? For example, like when we just saw with like the map. We do this all the time, but it's like, it's a little different scenario. And it's like a curveball. And the front end is very like, this is how the front end is. It's just very, not, I don't want to say messy. It's just, there's just so many different ways to do it because there's so many different UXs. So cool. I will leave this here. Yeah, for your homework, I'd say start to add React Bootstrap. You don't have to, but I would try to like getting a select box working. So I showed you how to do one. It'd be the same thing for the skills or the user. Oh, I'm actually mapping over the wrong thing. Users dot map. But yeah, the skills ID would be, you could copy and paste that and switch all of those to skills, but I don't know if that's gonna try to understand what's going on there. All right. Let's call it good. Let's come back. Let's call it 2:15. Just continue on working on your homework. I will push this up to GitHub. Does anyone have any questions?
I might tomorrow, but I kind of want to like just go through it all today and try to process it.
Yeah, same.
Cool. Yeah, this is not easy stuff. This is like, yeah, has many through is, like I said, it's not that it's super, like the concept is like that much new, but it opens up. It opens up a lot of possibilities. It's definitely makes things more complex. So you add one little thing, and it's like kind of when you like, it's just that many more combinations. It's like if you have a deck of cards and you add one more card, you have millions more combinations of stuff. So it can kind of feel like that. We're just adding one more thing to learn about, but then it's like it opens up Pandora's box a little. Cool. Yeah, let's hop off. We'll see you back at lunch at the TA channel at 2:15.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Sweet, thank you.